Hello, everybody, and welcome to This Day in History, where we take a particular day in history and examine why it's important. Something happened on every day in history somewhere, and we examine that here. We take a look at those events, why it's important. We also take a look at people that were born on that day, why they're important. People that died on that day, why they're important, and holidays on the day as well. So let's begin with today, January the 5th. On this day in 1914, the Ford Motor Company introduced the 8-hour workday, $5 a day minimum wage plus bonuses. Now, this was subject to some restrictions, especially in the area of character, but it became standard across Ford Motor Company. And for sure, this has had long lasting effects. Most people today work an 8-hour workday. We have a federal minimum wage. These effects have been long lasting, and a big reason why was Henry Ford and his introduction of this concept. And I think that if you work an 8-hour workday and you're not working a 15, 16-hour workday, in part you have to thank Henry Ford. On this day in 1933, the Golden Gate Bridge began construction. The bridge cost $35 million to build. That's $518 million in today's money, adjusted for inflation. And get this, the bridge was completed ahead of schedule and $1.3 million under budget, $24.2 million in today's money. That is impressive. Very, very impressive. Some births that have occurred on this day. Walter Mondale was born on this day in 1928 in Salon, Minnesota. He was, of course, Vice President of the United States from 1977 to 1981 under Jimmy Carter. He was a United States Senator from 1964 until 1976. He was Minnesota's Attorney General from 1960 up until his appointment to the U.S. Senate in 1964. He was ambassador to Japan after he served as vice president from 1993 to 1996 under President Bill Clinton. How he got the Senate seat is very interesting in a way. In 1964, when Lyndon Johnson was running for president after he became president because of the death of John F. Kennedy, there was a vacancy in the vice presidency. And Lyndon Johnson chose Senator Hubert Humphrey of Minnesota as his running mate. Humphrey was serving as a senator from Minnesota. When he was elected vice president, that caused a vacancy in his Senate seat, and the governor of Minnesota appointed Walter Mondale to the Senate, and Mondale served in that seat until his own election as vice president in 76. And it's actually, Mondale says that it was Humphrey that convinced him to take the vice presidency. But there were differences between the Humphrey vice presidency and the Mondale vice presidency. Mondale was the first modern vice president. He had weekly lunches with the president, the West Wing office. He was more than a figurehead. He was an actual integral part of the Carter administration, sought out for advice. There have been many people that have written and said that one of the few accomplishments that Jimmy Carter had as president, he had the wide range of things that happened in office that were not so great, was this introduction of an activist vice president, making the vice president more involved. Also born on this day in 1947 was Governor Mike DeWine. He is the current governor. He was born in Yellow Springs, Ohio. He's the current governor of the state of Ohio. He was the senator from 1995 until 2007. He lost to Sherrod Brown that year, and he lost by almost 1,000,000 votes more. I mean, he lost a substantial amount of votes between 2000 and 2006. But he came back in 2011 after getting defeated in such a manner to become a state attorney general in served in that capacity till he became governor in 2019. Except for the 4 years he was out of office between his defeat for the U.S. Senate and being elected Attorney General of Ohio, he has been in political office. There's a few days here and there in between his terms of service between one office to another, but since 1977, those 4 years are it. So he is a lifelong politician. When Mike DeWine cuts a commercial, he cannot say, "I'm not a lifelong politician." No, sir, you're a lifelong politician, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need good people in public service, and whatever you think about a person's policies, it's good to see someone devote themselves to a life of public service for the public good. Some deaths that have occurred on this day. In 1933, at the age of 60, former President Calvin Coolidge died in Northampton, Massachusetts. Coolidge served as president from 23 to 1929. He became president after the death in August of President Warren G. Harding. He served as Harding's vice president from 1921 until Harding's death in August of 23. He was the governor of Massachusetts from 1919 until his election as vice president in 1921. He served as lieutenant governor of Massachusetts from 1916 until 1919. He was the president of the Massachusetts Senate from 1914 to 1915. He was a member of the body from 1912 to 1915, and he was the mayor of Northampton from 1910 to 1911, and he was a member of the State House from 1907 to 1908. He is rated in the lower half of presidents by historians, but he's a big small government conservatives love Calvin Coolidge. People who like a more expansive federal government, they're less so hot on Calvin Coolidge. He had a dry sense of humor, silent cow. He restored trust in the White House after the Teapot Dome scandal, and before Watergate, Teapot Dome was the major scandal that engulfed a president. Warren G. Harding had scandals out the wazoo, and only more of them came out after his death. And it is just amazing of the level of corruption. He was the first vice president to attend cabinet meetings. Harding invited him to attend cabinet meetings, and he did. On the subject of his silentness, this is what he said. The words of a president have enormous weight, and ought not to be used indiscriminately. He was also aware of his stiff reputation. Indeed, he cultivated it. And he said, "I think the American people want a solemn ass as president, and I think I will go along with them." Although some historians have suggested he used this as a campaign tactic, while others believe that his withdrawn and quiet behavior to be natural, deepening after the death of his son in 1924. Even though he had the reputation as a silent person and a solemn person, he held 520 press conferences as president, the most before or since. His was the first inaugural address in 1924 to be broadcast on the radio. and he was the first president to appear in a sound film. And he also left office at the perfect time. The economy of the 1920s was tremendous. It was gangbusters. He left office in March of 1929 and handed the reins over to his successor, Herbert Hoover. He handed that over at the perfect time because in October of 1929, the market crashed, and of course the Great Depression began. Now, would Coolidge make some of the same mistakes that Hoover made? I don't know. I've not studied that enough. But I do know that the decisions that Hoover made were catastrophically bad. But like I say, it's also perfect timing for Coolidge to leave office. You have to think that some of the decisions he made in office may have led to the Great Depression. These things don't happen in a vacuum, folks. Another death that occurred on this day was another son of the Bay State. Tip O'Neill died in Boston at 81. He is the only Speaker of the House to serve 5 complete consecutive terms as Speaker. He is the 3rd longest serving Speaker in history, after Sam Rayburn and Henry Clay. They had some interrupted terms as Speaker. He served from 1977 to 1987. And something interesting, when John F. Kennedy was elected president, the member of Congress that replaced him in the House of Representatives was Tip O'Neill. O'Neill was a hard-boiled politician. He was a wheeler dealer. He was a strong opponent of the Reagan administration. Although in public they kind of cultivated a working relationship, friends after 6 o'clock, is what he would say. After 6, we're friends. Although, if you read some historians, they suggest that was more bravado and play than actual reality. There's some dispute if that was really a warm relationship as it seemed. And he has a long-lasting effect to this day. In 1979, he introduced something that changed Congress forever. C-SPAN. The cameras in the Congress, in the chamber, that changed the ballgame, folks. And they broadcast coast to coast. And there is a lot that's been written about the effects that had. And there was a young congressman from Georgia in 1979 that was just in his first term that was sitting on the back benches, deep in the minority, that realized the power this would have. And over time, he used C-SPAN to his advantage and eventually would become Speaker of the House himself. Now, I'm talking about Newt Gingrich, but that is the introduction of C-SPAN cameras into the House had a huge effect, and we're still feeling them to this day. And I think it was a tremendous decision. I have other feelings on cameras in committee rooms, but in the House chamber, absolutely tremendous decision. And holidays that occur on this day. Today is National Bird Day. That's all I could find on holidays today. I hope everybody enjoys these videos. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like if you like it. Leave a comment. If you want to leave a comment, tell me something to change. hit the bell notification also when you hit the subscribe button so you can know whenever I post a video. I've got some plans to do some videos later in the year on special events. As we get into primary and caucus season, I'm going to post some videos close to those, give my predictions on those events and stuff. I'm thinking later this week I might throw up a video giving my view on the state of the race at the moment. I will probably also do a video in the coming weeks after this month's Democratic debate, giving my thoughts on the debate as well. So I hope everybody enjoys the videos, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you.